Hello, Ivy here. This week's podcast is entitled Justice Will Be Served. Call to Action. SG UK, episode 88. This is a heartfelt request for international legal experts and advocates to liaise with each other and to recognise that the environment around human rights is changing all the time, and the knock-on effect of various forms of abuse is often hidden. Most people cannot and do not have the resources to challenge their abusers, and even where people are deemed to be affluent, abuse continues and people turn away thinking that the victim is not deserving of sympathy, not least because it is considered that they have the means to escape. What has been happening to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex since 2016 is both worrying and very sad. We almost lost Meghan in 2018 and her unborn child, and the risks to Meghan and Harry has reduced a little since they moved to Los Angeles, but they are fighting against major forces. It is very disturbing that abusive activity is still being done to this family, even though they have moved to another continent. The travesty of Prince Harry being refused security when or if he visits the UK, even though he offered to pay for it, this is deliberately placing him and his family in danger when he visits the UK. The private security that Sussex pay for in the USA are not allowed to carry guns in the UK. Last year, the vehicle that Prince Harry and his security was travelling back to the airport in, after his grandfather's funeral, was chased by paparazzi. Due to all the death threats from certain people in the UK and the extreme abuse that the Sussexes encountered behind the scenes when they lived here in the UK, not to mention what happened to Harry's mother, Princess Diana, when her security was taken away from her, Prince Harry is justified in being concerned. Lots more information in podcasts and articles that will be listed on the website very shortly. The aim of this campaign is for experts in the legal field to begin conversations with their counterparts in various countries and explore the processes and systems that exist in the international human rights legal field, because it does not seem that evident to my non-legal perspective. It appears that the international legal community cherry-pick which cases and countries they get involved in and ignore all the others. In the case of the UK, we have a monarchy system that upholds white supremacy beliefs, no matter the official response. Because Prince Harry mentioned in the Oprah interview in March 2021 that the family were concerned about the possible shade of skin of their unborn child. Just like to add here, for those at the back that are in denial about this fact, evidence exists in more than enough photographs of different members of the British royal family showing the symbol of white power. It is not a pose that can be done accidentally, and as I said, there is evidence of different members of the British royal family choosing to signal to their support base in residence of the places they have visited over the years. The fact that the only person of colour ever to enter that family lasted 2 years in that abusive environment, with the weight of a government and newspaper industry, televised media owned by the same or similar people as the newspapers, aristocracy and police. That is some strong forces to have abusing you. All work together And to top it all, the royal family is exempt from certain laws of the UK, and the King is currently exempt from all of them. It is interesting to note that the royal family do not have to comply with equality and diversity legislation either. Please note that whilst the monarch is exempt from all laws of the UK, and the family exempt from most of them, in reality, the people and organisations doing their bidding are not, despite what they think. The Sussexes are high profile, and they have still been on the receiving end from powerful forces. What about all those who do not have such a platform? The abuse continues, and their voices struggle to be heard. Human rights legislation exists, but it is ignored, or, as in the case of the UK, there are plans to water down the amount and type of human rights legislation that the UK will continue to sign up to in the future. This campaign is for existing legislation to be updated with the various forms of abuse which is being delivered by new mechanisms, such as electronically single-person accounts set up online to target one person with hate via posts online, several times a day and night, both to adults and children. We have included groups of legal advocates who are out there on the front line, assisting with and seeking justice for people who are not high profile, but who are equally deserving of recognition in the existing legal framework. I am aware that the law cannot be changed overnight, but it surely can be tweaked over time to reflect the additional ways people are targeted with abusive activity and which appear to go under the radar in too many cases. We have contacted a selection of groups from around the world, and myself and a group of volunteers are attempting to link you all with information about each other. It is our hope that you will make contact with some or all of the groups and individuals listed and explore ways in which the profile could be raised to bring attention to the fast-growing delivery methods of abusive conduct. Social media platforms generate income from hate-filled posts, and those who post hundreds a day each as part of a coordinated approach to trying to bring down an individual also each generate a very high income for their posts and the engagements they receive from the responses. Structured recruitment of individuals to join the group's approach takes place, and more people are encouraged to hate someone and to be part of this dangerous and destructive technique and weapon. An abuser can be in one country and inflict abuse daily to someone resident in another. It is a dangerous and sinister and growing activity. We, by that I mean the volunteers and myself, have included, applauded and respected global centres of research and education in legal matters. It is with the hope that a report could at some stage be produced between the various organisations that we have listed in our database, and hopefully include a small number of news networks that we have been approaching in recent days and will be doing so for the next few weeks, informing them of our campaign. The campaign all stemmed from a podcast channel set up to produce media and electronic receipts of things happening to the Sussexes since 2016, and to challenge lies and twisted truths by the groups mentioned earlier in this introduction. We are a global support network for the Sussexes, with a range of podcasts ensuring that deeds done against them are acknowledged and discussed. The Sussex Global UK podcast channel is part of that network. We each operate differently and we have different styles, but we all share the same aim, and that is to provide a ring of protection around the Sussexes against this onslaught from powerful people. We provide action by words and storage of receipts as evidence, because too often posts and or articles are removed from the internet by the organisation staff when it suits for it not to be in the public domain any longer, as part of the usual way of rewriting history, or trying to. The monarchy and the media underestimated the Sussex squad big time, and realised by the second year we were not going away, and in fact we continue to grow. At the last count, there were over 84,000 of us around the globe, and I know the figure is much higher than that now. We are a strong, intelligent and committed support network, and UK media cannot understand why we do what we do, purely out of our support for justice. The media like to report that we must be being paid by someone, most likely Meghan, when we know from research that the organisation and delivery of the range of hate accounts and the money being made is such that some people have given up their day job and devoted their whole existence to spreading hate online for cash, would suggest that those shouting the loudest are really projecting, and we know that it is emanating from high places in the establishment. The Sussex squad, as we are known, does not have a leader. We all support the Sussexes and challenge daily the breaches in human rights that we see. We raise six-figure sums for various charities throughout each year. Donations go straight to the charities, and our role is to choose a charity that the Sussexes have stated on their website, and we also choose charities who are operating in a similar way to those that Sussexes have named as charities on their website, and the process is the same, i.e. donations go straight to the charities on their own websites, and we just promote it for a set time. Sussex Global UK podcast channel and the topics discussed are all linked to business objectives of the Archwell Foundation. Discussions are centred around academic research on behaviours and impact, etc. And each podcast has an article which accompanies it each week, which lists the majority of the reference sources used. In its own way, we are creating a database of a wide range of human rights breaches against a backdrop of academic research, alongside experts in the field who have themselves written books on the back of their own research, and in many cases are globally renowned in a particular aspect of human rights. There are elected members who are included in our mailing lists, not least because some have been involved in passing laws in their USA state. Communications have been sent to the White House and the Obama Foundation, to name two of many others in similar areas of responsibility, and knowledge. You will hear more about the work of the volunteers over the coming weeks and months. We will be making contact with a number of organisations, additional to the ones that we already have in the database, to highlight the need for much needed recognition of the way some human rights are being breached with impunity. We have almost 2 years of podcast material, and like all the other Sussex channels, we will continue to produce material until those in positions to hold those types of discussions with peers around the world and bring attention to a growing serious problem onto the desks of those forums who are in a position to make meaningful change. Here is a brief summary of a few of the people that we have approached in this campaign to raise awareness and to get the right people connected to have conversations about how to progress from here. These same people will be approached by a wider audience now, since we have given out those names, and to any listener or viewer who wants to be part of this and try and do something, they have the choice of writing to some or all of those that are listed and any of their own people of choice that they think can help. On the list, the summary anyway, President and Vice President of the USA. Antony Blinken, USA Secretary of State. Barack and Michelle Obama of the Obama Foundation. Governor Gavin Newsom and Senator Suzanne Rubio. The reason for the inclusion of the last two names in this small selection is because the Governor and the Senator in September 2020, the 29th of September to be exact, had a bill passed in California, a coercive control bill, where it was looking at a range of abusive activity under the heading of coercive control, and it was for all residents in California. So if any of those residents of California felt, or other people on their behalf felt, that there was a need for intervention under that piece of legislation, this new bill was now saying that they were there, they had the facility and resources to do so. Previously, coercive control only applied to a partner or ex-partner. But legislation, the wording has changed now, not just in California, it's changed across the board to include families who abuse a member of the family. And when that person, if they manage to escape, if that abuse continues, this bill still covers it. So clearly, because the high-profile couple that we have included in this campaign, as part of many, many other people on the receiving end of this cruelty and vindictiveness, they reside now in California. So it made sense to have the two people that worked very hard at getting that legislation passed in California to be able to give their opinions, their advice, answer questions from anyone else who has questions about that area of legislation. So we've included them. But as I said in my podcast last week, despite many, many attempts by myself and volunteers to make contact with the governor and the senator, their system is such that you have to go through a particular website and do your email via the website. But the moment you put in your address, so in my case, UK, a UK address, it won't allow you to go any further. It only allows people who live in California to be able to report of any abuse in California. That's fine if you're the victim. That's fine if you live in California. But if you live outside of that state, never mind outside the country, but you know of abuse of a resident or residents, the system doesn't allow you access. So I don't think that was deliberate, but that's how the system has worked. I understand, as elected officials, they can only deal with their electorate, so to speak. But on something like coercive control, that can't apply. You can't assume it'll be the victim all the time that comes forward, or the victim's neighbour or nearby friend. You should be able to accept an inquiry with information about serious breaches in the law, whether or not that person lives in the state. So for those that are listening to this, if you are thinking of including Governor Newsom and Senator Rubio in your list of emails that you want to send, if you do not live in California, you won't be able to get through. But I am hoping that California residents will hear this podcast, and if not, someone will tell them about this podcast and they will put pen to paper. My next person on the list is one of two specialists. There are others that we have in our database, but I'm given two names here because these two professionals have appeared in quite a few of the podcasts for this channel because of their expertise in this subject. So my first one is Professor Evan Stark. I have referred to Professor Evan Stark in a few podcasts, as I said. He is an impressive presence on the international stage and a reputation for his innovative work on the legal policy and health dimensions of interpersonal violence, including the effect on children. His CV is beyond impressive. I can't find the words other than wow, just wow. Pages and pages. Experience, qualifications, research papers galore. Details are on his website. Professor Evan Stark is a forensic social worker, author of Coercive Control, published by Oxford 2007, and a lecturer who has taught at Yale and Rutgers University and held appointments at the University of Essex, Bristol University and the University of Edinburgh. Professor Stark's award-winning book was the original source of the coercive control model when the United Kingdom's Home Office widened the definition of domestic violence, and he played a major role in the consultation that led to the drafting of the new coercive control law in the United Kingdom. In the United States, Professor Stark, the world-renowned expert on coercive control, is consulted by state governments, domestic violence organisations, and the media on this mostly unknown method in the United States of intimate partner abuse through controlling and psychological manipulation and terror. The second expert, again, features in many of our podcasts, is Laura Richards. Laura is a renowned international expert on domestic violence, stalking, sexual violence, homicide and risk assessment. After a decade of analysing violent crime at New Scotland Yard, Laura became the violence advisor to the National Police Chiefs Council. Trained by world leaders as a criminal behavioural analyst at the Behavioural Analysis Unit, National Centre for the Analysis of Violent Crime at the FBI and New Scotland Yard. Laura has applied her psychology degrees to analyse violent crime from a behavioural and preventative perspective. Laura has a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and Sociology and a Master of Science in Forensic and Legal Psychology, and with a background in intelligence-led policing, has been the architect of law reform to better protect victims on 6 occasions. Laura is the founder of Paladin, the world's first national stalking advocacy service. Paladin was set up following the highly successful all-party parliamentary stalking law reform campaign spearheaded by Laura, which led to stalking becoming a criminal offence in 2012. More recently, Laura spearheaded the domestic violence law reform campaign to criminalise coercive control. Laura helped draft the new law and the statutory guidance and developed and delivered the first training on the new law in the UK. Tyler Perry is also listed. Tyler Perry is a world-renowned producer, director, actor, screenwriter, playwright, author, entrepreneur and philanthropist, and many, many other things, I am sure. I personally have tried to make contact with Mr. Perry for over a year. I know he's extremely busy, and I've made these attempts purely because I would love to see him involved in some way, no matter how small, because of his approach, particularly as a philanthropist, and because he was like, and still is in my eyes, an angel walking this earth, and he saved the Sussex family, because without him, I'm not sure that all of them would be here now. Truly, truly wonderful man. I tried to find a business email address for him, and although I found many, none of them were successful. They were either closed, full, inactive, of 3 reasons that come to mind right now. But either way, I couldn't make any contact. So I've included him in the possibles for any member of the public who's listening or watching the video version of this. If they come across an address, I would just like him to know that he's included on this as a possible voice to have these conversations with other experts in the field. And I would love to hear from him, or whoever, writes to him. I hope he responds to you, and then you could let me know and I can inform the team. All the contact details of the organisations that we have in our database, and they're all involved in an aspect of human rights work in some way. All the details that we have are all publicly available. So it's not as if we are doing anything or revealing anything that the individuals themselves had not placed on their own websites. So we use that to send out sort of questionnaires, information about things, see whether or not they want to be involved. And we have a growing list on there. They haven't all responded, but I think that's about the fact that a lot of them are very small organisations and barely have the resources to do what they need to do, and obviously their clients in front of them are the most important. But at least they know that we are here. We keep records of various articles written by a wide range of people and other podcasts if they touch upon subjects that we think people would want to know about. And one of those areas where we do have a number of comprehensive reports are reports produced by Bot Sentinel relating to the growing industry of the creation of a number of single-purpose, hate and much wider accounts targeting one individual. In time, there will be news sheets, newsletters coming out, and you will have this information there with their web links for you to go and look at some of these reports. They're excellent, excellent. They all are, but Bot Sentinel, to do with just the data and how it's been, the work that's gone into it, thoroughly recommend that you look that up when you have time, because you will sit there and read one after another. So good. There are reports on there about hate campaigns targeting the Vice President, Kamala Harris. Again, hate accounts targeting another black woman. The chief executive of Bot Sentinel, Christopher Boozy, has been invited recently onto audio and televised news networks in the USA about these developments relating to targeted online activity. So again, this is all sort of background of the kind of things that we're sort of pulling together so that we have an information base, and also people that we can consult and others in terms of their website like Bot Sentinel, and look at some of those reports. Very good. We, the volunteers at this channel, are requesting and hoping that the organisations that we have in our database that we sort of send things out to from time to time will, over the coming months, begin to have conversations with each other about how things can be included in discussions in forums which have the power to produce high-profile reports and recommendations which will lead to amendments in the future. Our group cannot do this. We are not in a position that all of those organisations in the database and the experts are and could do. Together, they could be a force. This started out about serious and dangerous human rights breaches relating to one couple, and it has developed into a much wider scope, deserving of prominence in the correct places, which will lead to visible changes. I respectfully, on behalf of the dedicated group of volunteers and all who are out there on the front line of being on the receiving end of abusive activity, or are out there trying to defend and help victims, I ask you all to give some thought to this request. This is not a quick fix, but it can be a higher profile than anything we can do in our respective locations around the globe, and it most definitely can lead to positive change. Some people who are in positions of power are responsible for and carry out abusive operations with impunity. Things need to change. What is the point of legislation if protection under the law is for a designated few? A small sample of human rights activists working on the front line, assisting a sample of those without a voice. Coercive Control Collective. Mission of the Coercive Control Collective is a community of people and organisations with the goal of unmasking a pattern of abuse core to highly controlling relationships and groups. They are committed to an approach that recognises intersectional systems of power that impact and structure the experience of victims. Amnesty International. The core activities of Amnesty International are research, advocacy, and lobbying and campaigns and action. The organisation employs experts who do accurate and action-based research into human rights violations by government and other factors. Human Rights Watch. Human Rights Watch is an international human rights organisation that investigates and reports on abuses of human rights around the world. Currently, it employs around 450 people, mostly country-based experts, lawyers, journalists and human rights activists who work to protect those rights. The scope of the work of the Human Rights Watch is wide, and the organisation is highly committed to reaching justice, dignity, compassion and equality. Civil Rights Defenders. Civil Rights Defenders was established in 1982 in Sweden as an independent expert organisation with the mission to defend civil and political rights. Human Rights Without Frontiers International. Human Rights Without Frontiers International is an international non-profit organisation that promotes respect for human rights around the globe and advocates for democracy, the rule of law and social justice, based in Brussels in Belgium. Became one of the most active organisations promoting human rights in EU institutions and shaping European policies towards human rights. Its core activities are advocacy, which includes research, sharing information, organising public events, and speaking to political leaders on a particular issue. Physicians for Human Rights. Physicians for Human Rights is an international organisation that uses the medical and scientific tools to attract attention to severe human rights abuses and mass atrocities. It was established an idea that physicians, scientists and other medical professionals own unique skills that would give credibility to investigation and documentation of human rights violations. Shared the Nobel Peace Prize in 1997 with 5 organisations to found the international campaign to ban landmines. Anti-Slavery International. Anti-Slavery International is an international organisation committed to eliminating all forms of slavery and similar practices. It is a UK registered charity. It is one of the oldest human rights-based organisations in the world that bases its work on the UN treaties against slavery to influence decision makers and inspire global change. The organisation holds consultative status with the UN Economic and Social Council, as well as observer status at the International Labour Organization. It uses its status to raise awareness and campaign against bonded labour, descent-based slavery, forced labour, forced marriage, the worst forms of child labour, the exploitation of migrant workers in conditions amounting to slavery and human trafficking. It partners with local organisations in the field to understand the local context and facilities, access to education, justice and compensation for people freed from slavery. Global Rights. Global Rights is an international human rights non-governmental organisation that was established in 1978 in Washington. In 2014, the organisation moved its seat to Nigeria and currently works in partnership with local activists in Africa, Asia and Latin America to build the grassroots movements that promote and protect the rights of marginalised populations. European Centre for Minority Issues. The ECMI conducts practice and policy-orientated research, provides information and offers advisory services concerning minority-majority relations in Europe. Research Institute is based in Germany. International Federation for Human Rights. The International Federation for Human Rights is a non-governmental federation for human rights organisations, founded in 1922. It is the second oldest international human rights organisation worldwide after Anti-Slavery International. Headquarters are based in Paris, France. Human Rights Foundation. Partner with world-changing activists. They defend, equip and give platform to human rights activists who are boldly changing their communities and countries. Frontline Defenders. Frontline Defenders, or the International Foundation for the Protection of Human Rights Defenders, is an Irish-based human rights organisation founded in Dublin, Ireland in 2001 to protect those who work non-violently to uphold the human rights of others as outlined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Human Rights House Foundation. HRHF establishes, supports and connects human rights houses, coalitions of civil society organisations working together to advance human rights at home and abroad. Today, 16 houses in 11 countries are united in an international network of human rights houses. Together they advocate for the freedoms of assembly, association and expression and the right to be human rights defenders. These four rights underpin a strong and independent civil society and protect and empower rights defenders. Human rights first. Activists fighting for freedom around the globe continue to look to America for inspiration and count on Human Rights First for support. Upholding human rights is not only a moral obligation, it's a vital national interest. America is strongest when our policies and actions match our values. Human Rights First is an independent advocacy and action organisation that challenges America to live up to its ideals. Survival International. We Are Survival, the global movement for tribal people's rights. We are the only organisation that champions tribal peoples around the world. We help them defend their lives, protect their lands, and determine their own futures. Our vision is a world where tribal peoples are respected as contemporary societies and their human rights protected. There are many more, but I'll do just one more for this podcast. All of them will be listed over time in our newsletters and things that we're going to start working on and sending out to people on our database. So the last one for this section, Minority Rights Group International. Minority Rights Group is the leading global organisation working for and with ethnic, religious and linguistic minorities and indigenous peoples worldwide. Campaigns worldwide with around 150 partners in over 50 countries to ensure that disadvantaged minorities and indigenous peoples, often the poorest of the poor, can make their voices heard. Through our programmes, publications, advocacy, legal cases, consultancy, training and education, and our action in the media, we support minority and indigenous people. They struggle to maintain their rights to the land they live on, the languages they speak, to equal opportunities in education and employment, and to full participation in public life. These organisations are just a small sample of people out there who have no voice, and activists working daily trying to raise the profile of the issues involved. A campaign like the one we have been invested in since 2016 has escalated to such proportions it requires international human rights specialists alongside individuals who are well known to raise the profile of these issues and to use an internationally known global couple who have been abused beyond the parameters that are in any way can be justified, and who we feel are an ideal case study in all areas of abuse and the ramifications of affluent people in power feeling emboldened to carry on abusing without challenge, and a public who have no sympathy for affluent victims. The perception is such that money can free one from abuse. The message that should be resonating is that if people in power can do this publicly to affluent individuals, then what chance is there for any person without financial resources to be abused in private? No civilised society should turn their backs on this area, because one day it will be someone you know or care about who becomes the next victim. The level of resources it has taken to abuse human rights over the past 6 years in our case study deserves international attention. systems in place that have and continue to incite hatred against one family. 3 years of it abusing a USA citizen on UK soil, with no protection given from any organisations, including USA-based elected officials, professing interest in and introducing legislation to protect residents of their state. To date, no one from California, who the volunteer team and myself have tried to contact, and who surely must know from media reports that one California high-profile couple and their children are still at risk. Every day, coercive control tactics are used to abuse this couple from UK soil, even though they left in 2020. The only person who stepped forward and offered a place of safety was Mr. Tyler Perry. The abuse is continuing in various forms now, and the key point for the volunteers and I is that none of us are high profile, none of us are elected officials, none of us can approach international human rights forums and ask that small but important developments in technology are enabling abuse to continue across continents, with the abusers in an entirely different country. Meghan had suicidal ideations, and the family at the root of it doubled down, as opposed to ease off and stop completely. We have developed video and audio podcast documenting the abuse over those years, and in layman terms pointed out areas of human rights law being breached. The volunteers and I have spent over a year on this so far, pulling together evidence, presenting it in summary format, showing the areas of the law and an overview of what has been going on in the UK and how it crossed over to Canada, and thanks to the blessing of Mr. Perry, Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, were helped out of Canada and into the USA. Whilst the Sussexes are much safer than before, that has occurred because they now have funds to pay for security, which was taken away from them without notice by the current king, who at the time was heir to the throne. The psychological abuse which continues is off the scale, and that is only from what we can see, and the Sussexes have spoken about in their documentary on Netflix and brief details in the interview with Oprah in 2021. We are not in a position to make people listen to our case, but all of you who we are now contacting in 2023 do have the profile, and between you the means to bring this matter to the offices of the organisations that can stop this, or introduce sanctions on those who persist with the abuse. The volunteers work full-time or are retired professionals like myself. Some of you have business emails advertised on various sites on the internet which are either full and not in use or no longer exist. Others of you have not responded to our communications. None of the USA elected officials have systems at the White House which enable anyone outside of their state to even submit a short email query. Gives the impression that only the victims or friends of the victims who know about abuse taking place in their state will contact you all. I cannot express to you how many hours over the last 12 months or so it has taken to try and contact elected officials, particularly those who have been involved in legislation promising protection for residents experiencing abuse of this type. Specialists in this area also appear reluctant to get involved, probably for the reasons I have mentioned, that affluent people are not a priority. Missing the point that affluent, well-known people will garner attention around the globe and in so doing could help so many more people worldwide, advocates and the abused. The authors in our target group also have shown no interest, I suspect for the same reason. I am not criticising here, but I am expressing my disappointment. I live in the UK, and trust me, it is a frightening place in recent years for people of colour, and I am doing my best to try and find a place where I can spend my final years in relative safety. It is not easy. I am not affluent, and knowing that money alone is not enough to stop this gives our campaign more urgency. We are not in a position to make people sit up and take notice, but all of you are. As busy as you all are, 12 months down the line, it would have been good to hear from some of you, and to hear ways where you could all liaise with each other, and in so doing, all your various areas of expertise and knowledge or experience could produce a combined powerful force. Those of you in this current circulation list are there because you could make a huge difference. We, the volunteers, do not need to know when you contact each other or the content of your discussions. I just want to ensure that Megan stays with us and that Harry does too. I do not wish to see any of the hotheads out there who have been fired up by the UK propaganda techniques used, or the online social media accounts set up to target Megan, some of whom have admitted publicly in the past that they are paid to post and incite further hate. Some of the accounts have also been set up because they now believe that Sussexes should die because Harry is a traitor to the UK now, and Meghan is to blame, etc., etc., etc. These people are not thinking logically, straight or sensibly, and that's me being polite. There have been death threats to both of them, and people have been charged and are in prison for it. And there are plenty more working every day to find ways to destroy them, all sanctioned by, let's just say, powerful people, powerful groups of people. It is a dangerous place for ordinary citizens too. Like I said, I cannot imagine how Harry and Meghan have coped with this for so long, and it continues. Meghan's father's side of the family have done much of the initial abuse, with the royal family hiding their hands, but again there is public admissions of the royals' contacts who acted as go-betweens between Meghan's father. The only difference between the two families is that the royal family have vast funds at their disposal and are able to control the UK media, printed and televised, to abuse and harass Meghan every single day. I beg of you, between you all, surely you can do something to start the legal organisations to have conversations about process. In theory, everyone is entitled to protection under the law. I would like to see some evidence of that now. I do not need to see what and when you contact each other, but I and the volunteers would like to see something start to move in this area now. I would also like to add that we are going nowhere. I, for one, will be involved with this campaign until I draw my last breath. It is important that someone stands up and takes charge of this abuse train that is rolling on without any sign of slowing down. It requires powerful people to call a halt, and it definitely requires elected officials to protect their citizens. There will be lots of Meghan and Harrys out there who have no profile at all, being abused in various ways every day. It should not have to require only residents in a particular state to be able to even report a case. I am beyond frustrated with that side of things. Hence, I am now going to have to resort to snail mail using funds in the hope that it actually reaches a desk of someone who will ensure that you receive it. And are spurred on to take action. I know that Mr. Perry has done more than anyone else in helping and being there for this family. But I recognise that he has a voice and may be able to persuade all of you to start a conversation. The 3 prominent universities were included to help with statistics and research papers, etc., and hopefully to be interested enough to want to work with students in producing new data about abuse, such as coercive control being carried across borders and the damage that is being done to teens and adults alike. The 3 universities that we contacted with a view to, should this get off the ground, that we would be making a request to see whether any or all of them could be involved in pulling stats together. And the 3 are Stanford Law School, Yale Law School and Harvard Law School. That's the end of this week's podcast, our call to action to seek justice. Speak to you all in the comments as usual, and we'll speak to you again during the week. Bye from me. Bye from Ivy. Bye.